Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the suffering servant passage today, Isaiah chapters 40 through the beginning of chapter 56. And we're in chapter 53 today. Really, I don't know, we would call this the climax of the passage. I guess it is the climax of the passage. We described Isaiah, his whole prophecy at the beginning of our study, as an epic. And it is contemporary with the Iliad and the Odyssey, those great foundational epic stories of Western thought and literature. And Isaiah was writing at about the same time those epics were being written down themselves. And it is a salvation epic. It talks about God's plan of salvation and the arc of that narrative, God accomplishing our salvation. And it ends with final judgment. It ends with the same piece of ground that is being plowed by the last chapters of the book of Revelation. But within the greater book of Isaiah, the suffering servant passage is itself like the epic in miniature, because it talks about God achieving that salvation in his Messiah, in his servant, and then the aftermath, the glory that we have because the price was paid, because it was achieved. And so if that's the case, then this really is kind of the climax of that passage. And then what we have is the epilogue. We get to see, the glory that happens afterwards. We're going to look at chapter 53, verses 1 through 3. And the first thing, when we God has said in verse 13 of chapter 52, look at my servant, look at my servant. I don't want you to flinch. I want you to look at him. I want you to look at him and how marred he is, and the blood he has to shed to sprinkle nations. Look at him. And as we look at him, the first thing that God says is, who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? To the prophet speaking here, the Lord said, I will bear my arm to save you. Okay. The Lord has bared his holy arm, verse 10 of 52. Okay. But how? With an army, with an angel? No, with the servant that everyone doesn't want to look at. You look at him. Nobody else wants to look at him. You look at him. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before us like a tender shoot, like a root out of parched ground. He has no form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we did not esteem him. That's the first thing. Jesus did not shine out in his physical appearance like a star of humanity. Saul was head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the kingdom. David was the handsomest man in the kingdom, and the greatest warrior. I mean, they were both, superior physical specimen. The Messiah will not be that person. He's going to be a laborer from Nazareth in Galilee. That's who he's going to be, and he's going to look like a laborer from Nazareth in Galilee. In Nazareth, I mean, just this one well town. I mean, Jesus is going to be, in the eyes of people from Jerusalem, a hick. He just is. That's where he's going to be raised, and his voice is going to sound like someone from Nazareth in Galilee. Does anything good come out of Nazareth? Um, as some, as someone who, is from one of our less respected states of the Union, born and raised in West Virginia, when people hear that you're from West Virginia, they look to see if you have shoes on, and those of my listeners who are from West Virginia know what I'm talking about. Jesus is from Nazareth. He's not from Jerusalem. He's not from Judea. He's not from Judea. He's from Galilee. He just isn't. And people are not going to look on him and think this is the guy that God sent to us. Simeon in the temple did when he was a baby, but when he appears on the scene It will be because of the force of his character, the force of his wisdom, the force of his words. He's not going to be someone who physically is going to inspire their allegiance to him. He's just not. And then on top of that, he's going to suffer physically, and his physical appearance is going to be marred in so many ways. Okay. We'll pick up with verse 4 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.